Hello, thanks for joining us. Let's do a quick run through of the interface and also how to use the web app to study a poem in the Bible. Once you've logged into our Sela app, you'll arrive at the dashboard. To start, we want to press New Study. And for our launch version, we'll only have Psalms available. And so let's, for example, look at Psalm 1 together. First thing you notice here is that the English text looks a little bit different. Our intent here is that we want to faithfully preserve the word order and word count of the original Hebrew. So here, each gray box represents one Hebrew word. Those that are familiar with Bible tools, you might think of the interlinear tool, but this is actually something more because the English here is meant to be fairly readable. We also have a button here called Uniform Width, and that will just adjust each word box to be the same width. And so when viewing it this way, it makes the word count very obvious and the rhythm discernible as well. First thing, when studying a passage, we really want to read it quite a few times. And this is in a new format as well. So we want to give it time for the meaning of the words in this poem to sink in and also try and get a feel of the original Hebrew rhythm. If, when reading, the English feels like it's hard to make sense of, you can also click here, the verse number, and that will open a tooltip and where we've provided the ESV for you to look as well. So you might read the ESV and then go back to read the English that we've provided and go from there. One of the grammatical difficulties that you might encounter is that in English, for us to say do not walk, in Hebrew, it's always in the order of not, does, walk. So instead of does not walk, it's not, does, walk. And so in our brains, we just want to put those together. If you're Hebrew savvy as well, there's a toggle button here in the top right. When you click it, it'll swap over to the Hebrew. And any modifications that you make in the English will also carry over to the Hebrew. So now let's talk more about how to study a poem. Briefly, there are two big questions to ask when studying a poem. They are, what is the structure? And then what is the message? And the message is intimately related to the structure. And related to those two questions, there's also a key concept. That is, repeated words and ideas inform us on both the structure and the message of the poem. Let's take a look at the structure of a poem. So a poem is made up of lines, and then lines collect them together to make a strophes, and then strophes collect themselves into stanzas, and then stanzas together make up a poem. So from here, we're going to move pretty quickly. I just want to show you a quick run through of the process of splitting into structure. But when you study on your own, it's really a calm and immersive process. And as you immerse yourself into the meaning of the words, that will be the main thing that guides you to looking and finding the structure of the poem. First thing to do here is to actually check the lines. For example, if you feel like this word belongs well to the previous line, you would click the word and then press move to previous line. If there's a whole string of words that you want to move, you would press the last word and then press move to previous line. If you want to split a line into two lines, you would click the first word and then press new line. And in the same way, you can also merge things to the next line. Now that we have checked the lines, usually you don't have to make very much edits because the line divisions are already provided by default. But now that we have the lines confirmed, we want to divide the poem into strophes. The approach here is really whenever you have a sense of a shift in ideas, that would cue you that it could be a new strophe. So for example, here we have blessed is man who does not walk, does not stand, and then does not sit. So these kind of go on together. But then in verse 2, for in the law of the Lord is his delight. And so here it's starting to have a little shift in idea. It's moving to explain the reason. And so to split into a new strophe, you would click the first word of the strophe and then press new strophe button. To merge back, to combine these strophes together, the two white boxes, you would actually click the strophe selector here. These are the strophe selectors. And then you would press merge with previous strophe. So let's quickly divide up the strophes. Once we have the strophes divided, the next task is to collect the strophes into stanzas. And the approach here is that there's usually a big pivot, a big noticeable pivot in ideas that will signal you that it's a new section, a new stanza. And so here in Psalm 1, you might notice that all of this is describing the righteous person, the blessed man. But when it gets to verse 4, the topic changes because it says, not so the ungodly. And so here, this whole section is an entire focus that pivots an idea. To mark a new stanza, you want to press the strophe selector, and then you could press the new stanza. And so stanzas, we have them side by side, horizontally. So that's how you would divide up the poem into its structure, into its strophe and stanza structure. So if you go back to the dashboard, you'll find a section called Pre-Marked Studies. And here I have a growing collection of study templates where the strophe and stanza structure is already provided. And sometimes there's some coloring done as well. And so hopefully this will help get you started in your own study. As you notice related words or ideas, you can color them to keep track of your observations. So here you can click them one by one, like this, or you can also drag and select, like this. And so here, let me show you the color tools. We have 3 options. You can change the fill of the word. You can also change the border of the word, and you can also change the font color of the word. Let's pick this one. And to erase the colors, you can also press the clear format button. As you notice similarities between strophes, you can also color the entire strophe. And so you click the strophe selectors, and then you can give them a color as well. And so I noticed that these 3 strophes are all about the righteous person, the blessed person. And so here, maybe I'll give it that color. But then this stanza is entirely about the wicked, the ungodly ones. And so maybe I'll give that a different color as well. Something like that. We also provided here a motif tool that opens a side tab with some smart tools in it. So here, under identical words, we have words that are repeated throughout the poem. With this tool, you can quickly select these words as a group. For example, the word not is repeated 6 times. You can select this, and then you could color all the knots at once, like that. We also so here we also provided a smart highlight button. If you press this smart highlight button, let me just zoom out so you can see it. It'll automatically assign colors to all the repeated words. And so from here, you could perhaps have a look, and maybe that'll help you to start noticing some patterns in the poem. For now, let's undo that. We also have a tool here called categories. This is not quite synonyms, but sometimes there are words that are related. And so I've curated this set of data, collected words together into categories. So for example, sun and light, they're not synonyms, but then they would be collected into a category. And so I think this is a good place to just click around and see what kind of themes show up. For example, there might be a section with a lot of words related to praise. There might be a section with a lot of words related to truth and knowledge and learning and something like that. So it's good to browse through them and see how ideas are repeated throughout a poem. So after you have split the poem and found the structure and divided it into its strophe and stanzas, the next question to ask is, what is the message of the poem? And the message is really intricately related to the structure because in a poem, the ideas are always delivered in packages. It kind of reminds me of like how in a modern pop and rock song, we have verse 1, chorus, verse 2, and each of these are distinct sections with a package of ideas. So the process of finding the message of the poem is really about immersing back into the meaning of the words. And so for each strophe, you want to think about how the ideas work together to form a package of ideas. The best way I found for me personally is to try and summarize what each strophe says. So for example, in Psalm 1, the first strophe, it says that the blessed man, there's three things that he doesn't do. Doesn't walk, doesn't stand, doesn't sit. But in the next strophe, it also has a set of three. There are three things that he does do. These are positive actions. He delights in it, he meditates, and he will be like a tree that's planted. We could give that a color, kind of show a positive action. And then there are three outcomes. It bears fruits, the leaves don't wither, and then whatever he does, he prospers. So there's three outcomes. You can again give that some color. And then in the last section, we have 6 lines, but these are all about the ungodly. The word ungodly actually shows up 3 times, maybe like that. And there are 3 outcomes of the ungodly. They are driven away, they shall not stand, and they shall perish. Maybe like that. And so whenever there are 2 stanzas, like in this poem, there are 2 stanzas, it automatically invites comparison. And so you might notice as you compare them, oh yeah, stanza 1 is about the righteous, stanza 2 is about the wicked. But you'll also notice perhaps there's a plant metaphor. In stanza 1, there's a very important metaphor that's a tree. The righteous person is like a tree. And on the contrary, there's also a plant in stanza 2. The wicked is like a chaff. What the color? Yeah. And then you might also notice that while the righteous man is blessed, maybe like that. The wicked, instead, he perishes. Maybe go pick a more visible color, like green. Maybe like that. Black. Black will be more visible. Yeah, so you would use the colors to keep track of your observations. Yeah. And so from noticing these kind of observations, that's how you would draw out the richer meanings of the poem and help you to understand the poem deeper. The best way to learn how to study a poem is really with practice. And so in the future, we're going to have more and more Bible study videos doing a full study of poems. But for now, the message of Psalm 1 might be something like this. Psalm 1 gives us 2 rich imageries. The blessed man is like a tree, the sturdy tree, sturdy and healthy. But the wicked person is like a chaff. It's dry and flaky, and then the wind kind of blows it away. And so with these 2 imageries, we want to be like a tree. And how do you be a healthy tree? The answer is in this middle section. This whole middle section tells us how. We want to be delighting on God's instructions, meditating on God's instructions, and that's how we'll become like a tree. When we do that day and night, it's like getting a constant stream of nourishment. And we don't want to join in with the wicked, because this whole section talks about how the wicked will perish when God's righteous judgment comes. Yeah, stay tuned for more Bible studies and a couple more features to point out. So say you're working with a bigger passage and you want to zoom out. There's a button here for zooming out, and that will help you to see the passage at a glance. Say you want to compare the first and the third strophe, but you're not currently looking at the middle strophe. You can press the collapse button, and that will help you to compare the first and third strophe really easily side by side. Say you had another stanza, so let's just move some things around, and you want to compare the first And the third stanza, you can collapse one of them. And so that will help you to compare things that are far away side by side. This is particularly more useful with really large passages with like 20 to 30 and maybe even 50 verses long. So back at the dashboard, there's a button here for you to share to public. If you click that, then the study would now be visible in the public section, and then you can search your study, Psalm 23 or Psalm 1 or whatever, and then you could quickly share with your friends the study here. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.